Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special interview with Caribbean cultural activist Clement Richards. And he's here for a very special reason, specific reason, in that he's launching and he has launched a new book entitled Indian Warner, the Son of Two Worlds. And this was launched on Amazon today, right? Um, the little that we know as Dominicans about Thomas Indian Warner is that he was the son of a white man and a Carib woman, Kalinago woman, who eventually became the lieutenant governor of Dominica. And ultimately, he was killed by his half brother, Philip Warner. And Warner, in follow up, also attacked the villager of Massac. In fact, he massacred everybody in that village. And so that's what most of us as Dominicans know about Thomas Indian Warner. But Clement has written a book, and in that book, we expect that there will be a lot more information about the story of Thomas Indian Warner. But what else do you expect that your book, or how would your book, or how is your book, because it's already written and it's already on Amazon. How does
Amazon
your
today.
book, yes, right. How does your book expand on the information that the average Dominican has about Thomas Indian Warner?
Well, Tim, it's a lot of stuff. First of all, that's just a general arc, right? But the details in there are amazing. And just a brief correction, he wasn't the lieutenant governor, he was actually the deputy governor, because at the time, the British couldn't have a British person in Dominica. So actually, it was just a way of trying to control him, but he turned things around. Um,
So what's the difference though, Clement, before you continue, between the lieutenant governor and the deputy governor?
Lieutenant governor would seem to me to be I don't know what's the position, the hierarchy, but it would have been essentially he was the governor in residence. He was the governor at the time, but he wasn't appointed officially as a governor. He was appointed as a deputy governor. So essentially, he was representing the governor, who would have been somewhere in Barbados or something, or Antigua,
Uh-huh.
but I'm sorry.
Right.
So basically, that's it. And technically, he was the first local head of state in Dominica. So he was, in fact, the governor in essence, in fact, because the British couldn't have a governor in. It's like saying that you having an ambassador in place, or an ambassador in residence, or just an ambassador from overseas.
Mhm.
So he was in fact the governor at the time, as in the position of deputy governor. But the question is, what else is there in this story? And I would tell you, it's too much. Actually, just buy the book.
No,
But
no, that's not why I brought you here,
yeah, but no, that's all right. That's just a way. Just put it in the
Mhm.
legs. But um, first of all, the story starts in Saint Kitts, and a lot of people don't know, and I certainly didn't know the link between Saint Kitts and Dominica in 1630, 1670, that period. The middle to, well, the start and to the latter part of the 17th century. Um, First of all, a lot of people don't know that St. Kitts was the area in which British expansion in the Caribbean started. Sir Thomas Warner was, in fact, the first Englishman to set foot in the Caribbean and stake a place for England. And it's from the other countries were gradually added, like Antigua and Montserrat, and then later on Barbados and stuff. So the interesting thing about this team is that the Eastern Caribbean is the area where colonialism started in the Caribbean. Okay, and his father was the person who established it, and in fact, for that he was knighted. He became famous in England, and so he was a famous personality in both Saint Kitts history and in the history of the Caribbean. Now, the book starts with that information about Saint Kitts. because in St. Kitts in 1626, you had a genocide that makes what happened later in Dominica pale by comparison. Because essentially they killed almost all the Kalinago people in St. Kitts. And those who were not killed were in fact shipped to Dominica. So Dominica has a strong history, a Kalinago history, which I don't know, become diffused, and I don't know if we can rediscover that. But so that is one thing that happened. And that happened before Thomas Warner was born, before Indian Warner was born. So that is the backdrop to his life. He was born in a place that had a serious massacre, and most of the people were either enslaved who remained or were sent to Dominica. And of course, he grew up in St. Kitts. He being the son, and there's a kind of murky thing happening. You don't have the clear information, but it seems to me he had a privileged upbringing. He could learn to read. He learned to shoot the musket, which normally you would not associate with slaves. And he was given access to tutors. But then when the father died, things changed, and he basically escaped. We can say he ran
But
away.
let me ask Clement, doesn't it figure that if he was the son of Sir Thomas Warner, and that Indian Warner was actually privileged as the son of the
Though,
governor of St. Kitts?
yes, but you forget colonial history, because racism was there throughout. And I think, in fact, what I think happened is that when the father was alive, he was given certain privileges. And when the father died, they were taken away from him. And in fact, that's what the book indicates. And he was forced, well, let's say, pushed to leave St. Kitts and escape and come to Dominica. Now, the interesting thing is that he grew up essentially as an European in St. Kitts. He came to Dominica in a kind of, it's an amazing thing, because I couldn't figure how he could have left St. Kitts to come to Dominica. He couldn't just jump on a boat. He didn't have money. His brother, he was in St. Kitts at the time, the same one that killed him later, wouldn't have given him any help. So I kind of determined that he came to Dominica on a boat. I have details of that in the book. But the interesting thing is, when he landed in Dominica as an European, essentially. And I think the only reason he was able to land in Dominica and get accepted is because of the connection his mother had, and the way his mother had taught him. Because essentially he would have had to land in Dominica in a very hostile environment. And from the first step, you would have a Kalinago coming at you on one day, because that's what they were doing. They were defending Dominica like nobody's business. You cannot land without their permission. And for him to have been able to do that was remarkable. So again, in the book, I kind of, because remember, this book is a book of historical fiction. It's not like actual history. But so you can use history and add things to it while keeping the general structures in place and the general facts in place. So certainly he came from St. Kitts, and certainly he landed in Dominica. So something had to happen to make him land in Dominica. And I think it was his Kalinago tongue, the fact that he could speak Kalinago. And he was able to shout out to say, hey, I'm Kalinago. I came from St. Kitts and whatever. And there's some interesting interplay there that kind of showed how he could have been accepted. But the interesting thing is, he landed in Dominica when he was around 15 years. And 15 years later, he was the Carib Obutu, or chief. Okay? So something remarkable happened at that time. And one of the things that happened is that he totally shed his European clothing. Because I don't know if you're aware, but at the time, they carried, I don't want to use that word, but I don't know how you want to come out. The Kalinago were like totally nude. They would just go around, they would more have bracelets on them and so on. And the ladies used to have something on their thighs and stuff like that. But clothing wasn't part of it, right? And I think they would have used mud and that kind of thing to rub on their skins to protect them from various things and stuff. But he was able to become totally Kalinago. because remember he was born in the English in an English home in St. Kitts, and he became so much Kalinago that he was able to become Kalinago chief. Okay, which was remarkable. But then when he became Kalinago chief, that's when the story really becomes interesting. I'm saying he could speak English, he could speak French, and he could speak Kalinago. And that gave him a major advantage. And then as Kalinago chief now, he really became a major thorn in the side of the Europeans. And there's a link with him and Matnik and being imprisoned. There is stories about how skillful they were as warriors, and the fact that they were attacking the other islands as almost, like when you're defending, one of the techniques for defense is attack is the best form of defense. And eventually, a plot was hatched to have him killed because he was so strong in Dominica that they couldn't do what they normally would have done, which is dispatch a ship to come and bomb the place and so on. They couldn't do that. So what they did is use underhand tricks and tricked him. His brother got involved and he was murdered. So, and that happened just outside of Massac. Now, you said that
Before you continue, Clement, let me ask you, does your book give any further insight on why his brother murdered him? You may not necessarily want to give all the details here, but I mean, I just wanted to ask you this question. Yes.
Oh, that's important because throughout the book, there is tension between his brother and himself. Okay? And it kind of culminated in that act. So it wasn't just like he just get up in the morning and I don't consider him his half brothers, but he's his brother. Like brothers is brothers. I'm thinking I haven't got half and thing like that. That's what people put in it, but So the thing about it, when after he was killed, the Europeans and English people actually, with a big contingent from Antigua, came on shore next morning and totally wiped out, exterminated, killed everything that was in that village and burnt it down. It wasn't named Massacre at the time. Of course, it would have had a Kalinago name. And the name of Massacre came after. It is actually given by the French, because at the time, the French and English were contesting Dominica. You know how many times Dominica changed hands between French and English and stuff. And that's why we have so much, that's why the Creole came in. It's like the French people were mainly in the rural areas and the English people were in town. So even when the French were expelled, they still had a major hold in Dominica. And in this time of Creole, that is where it came from. So it was after that they named the place Massacre. And we don't give that name the significance because it deserves. Because what it really means is genocide, is extermination, is slaughter. So that's what the name Massacre means. But we kind of shorten it and creolize it to Massacre, which is the same, it's from the same word of massacre. So if somebody from overseas, especially Europe, would be watching a map of Dominica, you'd be wondering, how come there's a name of a place called Massacre? So it is really it's something striking in world locations. Actually.
And it does have a history, Yeah, I mean,
Yes, yes, yes,
it does have
yes,
significance.
yes.
Right.
But one thing I want to emphasize: the story of Indian Warner is not a story of just an individual. It's a story of a people at a certain time. And Indian Warner basically embodies the spirit of rebellion and fight back and resistance and anti-colonial relations. So basically, and that is it. The story is a lot bigger than Indian Warner. And what I did in the book is to have a very positive outlook of Kalinago culture and Kalinago life, actually, because it has come down to us that the Kalinago were savages, they were warlike, they were this and they were that. But in fact, what the Kalinago were is like any group of people who would have been attacked especially when you're trying to take their land and to destroy their family. They fought back with fury, and they were fearless. They were not like people afraid to die, because in that culture, the whole is what is important. It's not so much the individual. The individual fighting for his community, for his whole, and so they were and I gave details of life in the Kalinago community, and for instance, and try to deal with certain of the myths that were coming out, and the falsehoods. So it gives a very sympathetic view of the Kalinago, and establish them as real foundation builders of Dominica.
You described the book in information that you released to the media,
Mm-hmm.
prior to the launch today, as a book that aims to restore dignity to those marginalized in colonial records, right? Encouraging both Caribbean and global leaders to deepen their understanding of the region's complex history. Expound a little on this as to what you mean, what you're
Well,
trying to accomplish here.
first of all, like for instance, even if you take the starting with the genocide in Saint Kitts in 1626, there is a story that the Europeans were fearful of being attacked, and so they attacked first, and then that's where Dominica comes in again. It was stated that is a Kalinago lady from Dominica, Bab, who had this relationship with Sir Thomas Warner that sold out the thing. So then they used her information to strike first. But actually, historians have reflected that that was just a smokescreen, that they wanted to clear the place of Kalinago. And they used that as an example. They just used that as an excuse. And nowhere in the history is any note taken or quote given or any specifics of Bab being the person. It was just stated she was. So that is a historical, that's a historical black box, you know. Again, how she lived in St. Kitts, the exact relationship, how things developed, it's silent. And even more silent to me is what became of her. She was supposed to have left St. Kitts and came to Dominica before Indian Warner came to Dominica. Indian Warner came to Dominica, he became chief, but there is no information about what happened to her. There is a slight thing that I got that she was a Kalinago shaman. She lived to be over 100 years and stuff. But in the records of Indian Warner, no real information is given about her, because the records of Indian Warner would have been from the English, and they didn't find that was important, you know. So and of course throughout, the fact that people were saying the Kalinago were savages and whatever, we don't have information from them as to why they were so insistent, why they were so warlike, what was their motivation. We don't have it. So we can just see from historical records and things that transpired after, and we can we can figure it out ourselves, or actually give some idea to that. So there is a lot of, and not only in Dominica, but throughout the Caribbean and further afield, anything to do with local resistance, with local leaders, with indigenous culture, with what was not European is left out. And I think it is important. We think that it's so long ago. It's just like 400 years ago. We were slaves. You understand? And we were free in Africa for thousands of years prior to that. So we have to go beyond the slavery and to really reclaim ourselves as people, both Afro-Dominicans and Kalinago, and to basically almost rewrite the history from our perspective. You understand? A lot of the history I know of the Caribbean from going to school and what was written afterwards, and so it's always the history of the British and the French in the Caribbean. Hey, the British go to Africa as if it's they that invented Africa. But then they took the Benin bronzes. Do you know about the Benin bronzes, Tim?
No,
All
unfortunately not.
right.
So
The
perhaps you can tell me a
Benin,
little about it, because
yes, yes,
since
yes, yes.
this
Well,
is not about what do you call it, the Benin
the
bronzes?
Benin bronzes, the
Bronzes, no.
bronze statues from Benin.
Okay, take a
That was
few
so
seconds to
exquisite.
tell us about that. Yes.
Yeah, it was so exquisitely done that it reflects a civilization, a highly developed civilization. You couldn't go to Benin and take the bronze and say they're uncivilized. You understand? The same way you come to the Caribbean and you decide the Kalinago were uncivilized. But guess what? In Kalinago culture, the chief wasn't hereditary. You had to earn your position as chief. And when you became chief, you don't pass it on to your children or to your nephew. No, the next chief has to earn it. And there is no big war, there's no records of warring going on between Kalinago groups in Dominica for who to be chief. Whoever is established as chief was established. And the whole system was based on communal living with so basically people living together. And at that time in Europe, in the 1630s, you had war, like no clothes, for like old clothes to figure who is the next king. So
Right.
you couldn't say European civilization was at a more advanced stage. Materially, yes, it
Perhaps.
was,
Yes.
but from a communal point of view, from the point of view of social structure, the Kalinago culture was a far advanced, and that is not known.
How did you do research the book?
Well, Tim, the amazing thing is, some years ago, I was doing some research for various things, including like submarine warfare in the Caribbean and various other things. And it was just impossible to do to do it properly. I got some information, but now you have something, Tim, that is changing the world, and it has totally democratized the flow of information, and it's called AI. And using AI properly, it's amazing the type of information that AI would be able to give you. Like it's really amazing. And one of the things I have found is that information on Dominica seems to be plentiful, more so than some of the other islands. And in fact, this book is part of that process of developing the Dominica Information Bank, as I would call it, because anytime once one AI knows something, all AI knows it. It becomes available to everybody. So whatever you put out there is like a pool, and they get information on it. But of course, you have to know what to do, and you have to know how to get it. But I was able to get, because what the AI does is that, for instance, if you go to a university and ask, what do you know about Dominica? They would pull out what they have and they would tell you. But if you ask AI, what do you know about Dominica? They would go to all universities, all the papers, all documents, all songs, and give you the information. Of course, they won't give you all the information about everything, so you have to know how to approach it. So my secret weapon there was AI, and when I compared it to what I did in the past in terms of research, wow, it is just something else.
Okay, but you realize too that AI is still the development of AI or artificial intelligences, because there are several of them coming out now. So the creators are still at the point where they are programming that information into their AIs, right? For example, ChatGPT, right,
Mm-hmm.
has different grades, okay? So that
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, say 3, is not as effective or as informative as 4, because because I had an experience where I asked an AI, I don't remember whether it was ChatGPT or some other, because I also experiment with this, a specific question, and which I knew the answer to, right? I was simply testing it, and it came back and told me that that information was not available, right? Which sort of corresponded with what I had already learned, that the information is being programmed into those tools, and they do not have all of the information. You have to program it into them until they get to the point, perhaps, where they're all allowed to share the internet. I'm not sure we're at that stage yet, are we?
Well, Tim, listen, I'm not an expert on AI,
Mm.
but I'm an expert on the research I have done. I'm not an expert on research either, but I'm an expert on what I've done. And I can tell you, what is available now from AI is simply amazing.
No, I
Okay.
agree. I totally agree. I
And
totally agree.
I don't want to say anything about where
No,
it is now, but I'm just saying in terms of this book, and you have to know.
well,
Okay,
but the
for
question I
instance,
wanted to ask you though, Clement, was
uh,
that why I mean that was a precursor to the actual question, and that is, how were you able to verify that the information you were getting from AI was in fact or is in fact correct?
you cannot just let AI do stuff for you without you knowing what you're doing. You have to
Absolutely.
because what AI is an assistant. It's artificial intelligence, but it's actually an assistant. It's basically each of the AI things are basically AI agents. They're supposed to be helping you. So as I told you, the story of Indian Warner is well known. There is no doubt about it because it was recorded in the English documents. So we know what
All right.
happened,
So
right?
essentially, the
What,
information you got from AI, you were able to verify it otherwise.
but let me tell you, in doing this, I can remember doing something and asking a question, and the AI came out with coconut, not breadfruit trees and whatever. And I said, wait, in 1620, we didn't have breadfruit trees in it. So you have to know that. If you didn't, you would put it in. When you're talking
Mhm.
about the fruits and so that the vegetation that the Kalinago had, you would put that in. But if you know, you leave it out. However, coconut trees were there. So you have the coconut palms, but you
Mhm.
don't have the breadfruit. So if you don't know, you cannot, it's not advisable to use AI for things you don't know. You use AI to help you to get specific information. So for instance, you will tell AI, okay, give me some information on the Catholic Church, the French priest in Dominica in the whatever time. And it would give you information which you know is the general information at that time. But it couldn't, if it tell you, well, at the time the priests were driving vehicles, that don't make sense. So there's a way that you basically have to know what's happening.
To tell us now about the book launch, right?
All right. So the book is coming out today. And it's really important that as many people as possible buy if you're going to buy the book, buy it now. Don't wait for next week. It is really important to sell as many books as possible in the first couple of weeks before the weekend, because that's the way Amazon works. When you have more activity, it's just like a YouTube video. They then present your stuff to more people. If there is a little bit of activity, it stays on the shelf somewhere at the back. So, again, it's a little bit selfish, but that also promotes Dominica. It makes Dominica get a higher profile in the Amazon world and basically online. The other thing is the book is being sold directly from Amazon. And some people might be saying, boy, I don't know how to bring it to Dominica, but I have a solution for you. Because as you know, I'm a solution guy. If you buy the book and you buy it, let me know and we can get some arrangement done where you can buy the book and it will be shipped to Dominica for you. Basically, well, when you buy the book, you have the freight cost from where it is produced to wherever it is in the States. That America delivery cost will be eliminated because I'll be using Amazon Prime. And for delivery to Dominica, it would come on my eZone account. So you'll be basically buying it around the same price you'd get it from America. You wouldn't be paying the freight in America, you'd pay the freight to Dominica and you get your book. And easy as 1 to 3. Of course, a lot of people buy stuff from Amazon and they have their own ways of delivering, but that is just for the people who don't have it. And especially for the people who are here for the Creole Festival and for Independence, you're looking for a souvenir. What is the best souvenir than to order something basically from the history of Dominica and to have it delivered to you wherever you are, in France, in England, in Canada? You haven't got to carry nothing. When you reach home, it will be waiting for you. You understand? And I especially want to encourage people from the diaspora, especially those with children who know nothing about Dominica, buy that book for them. It will help
Okay.
them. And the book is just 14.99 to 15 US. I mean, that is what? I mean, that is nothing in terms of of expenditure in American context. So that makes a perfect souvenir and a perfect addition to your library at home, to your bookshelf at home, and something that is really substantial and hopefully will lead to other things or in that same vein.
Okay, but and clarify for us. You first launching the soft cover version, right?
Uh-huh.
On Amazon. You also, I understand, intend to release audio versions as well as a hardcover, right? Tell us about
Right.
that.
Well, not so much about the hardcover because the hardcover might it's neither here nor there. I don't know if people really want to buy that in hardcover, but yeah, there's that option available. The problem is every version you put on Amazon, you have to be careful because if the version doesn't sell, it leads to demerits against you actually. So it's better to have one or two things and get them sold because the whole idea is to gain visibility in Amazon to say, hey, Mr. Richards is somebody that we want to work with in the future and stuff like that. I'll do the paperback. We're also going to do an ebook version. But more importantly, I'll be doing so I think by next week, the 31st, I should have the audio version, the audible book, the audible version or the audio book, because a lot of people like to listen to that kind of stuff now. And again, it would be a good thing, a good addition to their reading or their listening over the independence. They have a long weekend, so I want to have it out there for people. Of course, that is a lot cheaper than the $15, but it's not as good for me because I don't make it much on the Audible. But anyway, it is good to spread the word and to let people know the story because the story of Indian Warner, Tim, is a story that is far bigger than Dominica. And I would really would like to see a movement to get Indian Warner recognized not only as a national hero in Dominica, but a national hero, a regional hero of the Caribbean. Because he was one of the first people who stood up for Caribbean people, for Dominica. And it was not only for Dominica, because his reach was as far as going down to St. Vincent in the south and going up north to St. Thomas and those places up north. Because that whole region was Kalinago land. And that the whole idea was to preserve against the people who were invading. And the people who were invading were saying, oh, but you are bad boys, you're fighting us. What do you expect? See what they were doing. If people would just Google the 100 Years War, see what they were doing at the time that they were coming to the Caribbean and saying the Kalinago were warlike. There's nothing more warlike than, well, I'll just leave that there, but I'm telling you straight. The Kalinago had every reason to be warlike.
Yeah. To help spread the message of getting Indian Warner recognized beyond the shores of Dominica, in the Caribbean, are you considering making some books available to schools?
Boy, I kind of hesitate to
I
give
don't. I hope
that.
I didn't put you on the spot,
No,
right?
no, no, no,
But
no. I
I'm just
hesitate to
thinking,
give
yeah.
that to children. That's not a history book. You
Oh,
see,
okay. All
it's
right.
not a
Okay.
history book.
All
It's a
right.
book for mature people
All right.
who are reading history. You
Mm.
understand?
All
It's
right.
not for somebody to be introduced to history.
Okay. I got
For
that.
the history
I got
book,
that.
check Lennox Only Church. Lennox Only
Mm.
Church has a very good thing on Indian Warner,
Yeah,
But
but in terms, okay, I take the point. But in terms of the point that you have been making, that there's so much more information about, to do with the story of Indian Warner that we don't know about, that
and the story of the Kalinago because he
of the
was part of the
Kalinagos
Kalinago. That's the
generally,
important
yeah, that
thing.
we don't know about. So, I mean, how do we what do we do to ensure that we get that information from a historical standpoint? Because a lot of the history that we've been exposed to has been done from the perspective of the colonizers. You understand?
Exactly.
So the question
Exactly.
is what should we do? What should we be doing to ensure that we as a people, our children, school children, more importantly, are exposed to that information?
No, Tim, we'll have to do that in another thing because if it's open that kind of
Okay,
worms, it's
yeah,
another
okay.
story.
Well,
But what I'll just
fine.
tell you though
Right.
is we have to take it in incremental steps. So first of all, I wish the Kalinago people here, I'm in touch with the chief and a couple other people and stuff like that. Joel Paris in Miami and stuff. I wish they would adopt the book in the spirit it is given. It is not history. It's me trying to put things together and to portray the Kalinago in as positive a light as possible. I have other ideas of what the Kalinago can do and how they can do it, but I don't want to be the one to tell them what to do. What I would say though is this: I am willing to help in whatever way possible. okay? And I'm willing to help to bridge with other people as well. Because frankly, Tim, I only come into this conclusion now. We live like two separate groups in Dominica. We are not like one nation. Like when we talk about independence, and so it's for us. And then the Kalinago have the Kalinago week. The Kalinago should be part of the independence. The Afro-Dominican should be part of the Kalinago week. We should have a greater synergy and a greater sharing because remember, it's the Kalinago that gives us the conch shell, which is another story. We're not going into it
Yeah,
now. Okay,
you'll
we're
come
not
back,
going into it. Just
You'll
remember that.
come back so we can talk some
So
more, right?
we'll think it, and I hope
Right.
that we can generate interest from the Kalinago people themselves now, and that is the point. Let the
Okay.
Kalinago people themselves start to recover and research their own history. That is the
Okay.
important thing.
Well, Clement, thank you very much, man. Again, the book has launched. It's available on Amazon, in paperback version, and you expect an audio version to come out soon, right? The
Um,
prices
um,
again, very quickly. Yeah.
Before that, I'm just saying, like some people might know how to get it on Amazon, but if you go in Google and you Google Indian One, a Song of Two Worlds, Clement Richards, you will get it. Or if you go in Amazon and do the same thing, so you can just Google and it will come up. It's
And again,
live now.
so they can go ready with their cards to
Yes,
ensure they
yes.
have
Well,
enough money.
I'm
How
gonna
much is
say
it going to cost again?
why I said that. 14.99.
Yes, you did. Yeah,
Right?
but I want you to repeat
And I
that.
mean
Yes.
Dominicans advance in Amazon shopping. I mean, like it's just
Okay.
that you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
buying the
yeah.
shoes or the thing
All
now. You're
right.
buying the book,
Okay.
And I
All
hope you'll
right.
buy as much books as you buy in the other things. You know what I'm
All right.
saying?
Thank you very very much, Clement. Congratulations on the production of an interesting fiction fact, book. And we wish you all the very best, with
And
the
thank you
sale of this book.
and thank you, Tim, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I hope we'll do some more work in the future.
All right. We're looking forward to that.